Good evening and welcome to your second league edition of the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Life. And this one is going to be just that little bit more positive, we hope, following last week's drubbing at Hillsborough. But hey, losing 4-0 on a Sunday, it comes round to the best of us at some point, doesn't it? Joining me this evening to dissect even the 1-1 draw with Hull City, I'm delighted to be joined. I'm going to work in anti-clockwise formation. Finn, bottom left. Finn, are you well?
Yeah, good to be back. Obviously was on the Europods over the summer, but I've had a bit of a break. And after last week, I wouldn't have said it, but it's kind of refreshing probably to be talking about Argyle again.
Certainly is. Bottom right-hand corner, doing his best Adam impressions. Sam will hopefully come through to the call centre very soon. Are you well?
Yes, and hopefully now that I am doing my Adam impression, people will stop moaning about my sound quality in the comments. So, yeah, I'm well. Thank you, Joe.
Well, we can't have everything. And top right, sporting a very fetching Adam Randall jumper live from Wembley, John Allsop. John, I'll ask the same question. Are you well?
Good, thank you. Yes, I've been through my spell in witness protection on Monday night, and I'm delighted to be back on the pod this evening.
I'm sure you are. And if there are any supporters joining in from the hashtag SWFC hashtag this evening, you are very welcome. And we look forward if you are going to participate in the comments. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter this evening. Do get your comments in, throw them in. Aaron is producing live from the Peak or Lake District, one of the two of them. And he will be showing up your comments and starring me some questions as the evening progresses. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Do remember to like, comment, and subscribe to all of our channels. You can see them very nicely situated below Sam Down's chest on your screen. All the various platforms that you can find us on, not Sam's chest, but all your favorite podcast platforms. We are there. And last but not least, you will find a link in all of our bios at the moment to the FCA Content Awards. And we would be delighted if you were to put us forward for one or two little things. So do support the channel on the podcast awards nominations. You can find that link via all of our platforms. So, fresh from the 4-0 defeat at Hillsborough, we then trundled into Wednesday night and a 3-0 comfortable, successful passage past Cheltenham Town saw us go to Watford away in a couple of weeks' time. But then came the real deal, and we were hoping to see an improvement from Wayne Rooney's side in the Championship as Hull City, just 104 days after that fantastic afternoon in May, came back to Devon. And this time they did manage to leave with a point. John Allsop, why don't you talk us through the 1-1 draw?
Yeah, I'll go first because I think we're going to have a lot of rubbish being said after my.
Surely not on a Green and White podcast.
So no, I'll say I thought it was. I mean, I don't think anyone can dispute that it was enormously better than last weekend, but obviously that was an exceptionally low bar to clear. So I guess the question mark is how much better. I thought it was a lot better. I thought that we started the game with a really good mentality and a really good approach. Some of the execution in the final third wasn't quite there. I think that, as much as we have added to the attacking options this summer, I'd love us to do some more in that area if we can. In particular, like with all due respect to Mustafa Bundu, I don't think he looks particularly comfortable in the 10. So I think if we can get someone in who can do that position a little bit more naturally, that would help, because we were picking the ball up in so many good areas. I think we anticipated coming into the game that Hull were going to try and play out from the back, and I think we anticipated as well that they didn't look particularly convincing at doing so based on their first couple of games in the season, and that's how it proved. Unfortunately, we just couldn't quite take advantage of any of those opportunities. Obviously, Hull came into it a little bit more as the half wore on. I thought that they were pretty. I thought we were pretty much the better side in the first half, although I guess you could make a case that it was fairly even Stevens going into half time. I think in the second half we were indisputably the better side. Obviously got that great goal to give us the lead. Twinkle toes from Sissoko, who is a interesting player to watch. Obviously, very high highs and quite low lows, I think would be my assessment so far of him. But yeah, obviously it's exactly what we were hoping for from him, right? A wonderful piece of control and superb finish, lashed in at the near post. And I thought after that, we got back on the front foot again after scoring, and looked fairly comfortable. Obviously, then they sort of scored a goal out of nowhere. Is it great defending from us? No. Is it also a fantastic finish from Coyle? Yes. Sort of kissing the post on the way in. After that, I felt that, well, I guess I'd be lying if I said there was only one team who looked like winning it, because I had a few heart in mouth moments as Hull approached our box late on. Could just kind of see us getting done by a smash and grab. But I think looking back on it, we were by far the best side. We had opportunities to win it, maybe not golden chances, but sort of good shots from the edge of the box that just on another day might have gone an inch inside the post rather than an inch outside, or a little bit lower. Thinking of the JB effort, which sort of grazed, I guess, the top of the crossbar, maybe a bit higher than that, but a good effort. So yeah, I think a really much improved performance, and frustrating not to win in the end, given that we were the better side. I think the question I have, which is what I told Sam and others at full time, is, was that performance a kind of baseline good performance for us with, still a new manager, new system, new players, and can we, kind of kick on and build on that? I think if we can, if the answer to that question is yes, that's really exciting. On the other hand, though, if the answer is no, and that's about as good as it's going to get for us, I think I would have some concerns, because there were shortcomings in the performance. We ultimately didn't take what was, I think, a gilt-edged opportunity to win a game. So I can't sit here and say that all of the takeaways are kind of overwhelmingly positive, but I think I'm far more positive about the performance than the other two you're going to hear from now. And overall, it was a pretty good day at the office, and most importantly, a fantastic response to last week, which I think was massively needed. Goes without saying.
It certainly does. Finn, come straight to you then. Was that the benchmark for a good performance, or is there more to come from this Argyle team as the months and weeks progress?
Look, I think it was a good. I was pleased with the overall performance yesterday. It could have been a lot worse. If we lost 2-0 without really threatening yesterday, for example, I feel like a lot of the fans would have already been on Rooney's back, and 2 games into the season, that wouldn't have been a good thing. However, I did really think we started the game positively. I think we saw signs of how Wayne Rooney sees his football team, how he wants his football team to play, particularly in those early stages. And it kind of sort of, there were a few bright patches for both sides throughout the game, but often, like with sort of early season games, it kind of fizzled out in periods as well. The concerns that I do have is, like I said, I think for me it was evidence that, unlike somebody like Ian Foster, Wayne Rooney does actually have a very defined style of play that he wants to execute. However, I think there are a few too many holes in the system, and we got bypassed very easily a lot of times in midfield. Well, Hull's goal being a prime example of how easily they were able to carry the ball up to the edge of our box quite a few times. And I think against stronger opposition, that could come back to bite us. I do feel that there was enough signs to say that we're going to have quite a few fun games this season, especially with the quality of Sissoko and Whittaker on the wings. I mean, you'd find not many teams could probably boast wingers of that quality. 2 wingers of that quality on their wing. So for us to have it, when we're sort of one of the teams with lower budgets in the league, that's really exciting. But I don't know. I saw some encouraging signs, and I saw maybe some evidence of how Wayne Rooney had sort of swayed the board in the interview in terms of how he wants to execute football. I just have question marks, obviously very early, but I also do have question marks over whether we have, one, the budget, and 2, the kind of style of player, enough of the style of player that is needed to play the way that he wants to play.
Let's move it on then to Sam, but I'm going to sort of tee you up, Sam, because John sort of hinted in the group chat that there might be some negativity, or maybe some more bringing us down to earth a little bit with your comments. But I just want to tee you up a little bit with yesterday was a very entertaining game, wasn't it? It was two sides. I mean, I likened the first 20, 25 minutes to almost a basketball game. Both sides seemed to abandon all pretense of a midfield. And that lended itself to a very entertaining game. And, as paying supporters, that's what we want, is it? We want entertainment and our side to avoid defeat. And that's what we did. So what could you possibly have to be negative about?
Well, it's a very good question, Joe. And yes, I will say it was absolutely orders of magnitude better than the rubbish we watched a week ago. Obviously, I wasn't on that podcast, but I won't, give my full view on the games because that's what the previous podcast is for. But I came out of that Sheffield Wednesday game thinking that's up there for one of the worst, if not the outright worst performances I've seen in my 22 years of going. And I think calmly the day after, when I actually looked at the stats and all of it, I think I decided it was the outright worst. I was very annoyed as well with the first 40 minutes against Cheltenham, which we looked completely listless. But in the 5 minutes before half time and then the second half, that was all we could have wanted against that level of opposition. So I went in, to set the context, I went into the whole game thinking this game is going to be very decisive because this is kind of, if you're making a roadmap to 51 points to survival, and even more emphatically, if you're making a roadmap to kind of, 57, 58, 59 points to represent a substantial improvement on last season, that is absolutely one of the games you mark down as a win. And yes, I know that it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you win games you don't expect to. Sometimes you lose games you expect to win. Of course, that does happen. But I went into the game thinking, right, this is a litmus test of, very much as John said, which I do agree on, are we going to be a fun, vibesy side who can maybe keep our neck above the water by winning a few home games? Or are we just going to be a side that are horribly out of our depth and have a bit of a Rotherham style season? And this was going to be a litmus test of that. And in all honesty, what I saw kind of made me think it would be between the two of those. I didn't see enough cause for excitement to think that, yeah, we're going to win enough home games like Schumacher did to stay over the line. But equally, I saw enough there to make me think that we're going to be competent in some of these home games and certainly a lot more fun to watch. Yes, the first 25 minutes was a bit of a basketball game, you're right. It did calm down a little bit after that. Do I think we were the better side over 90 minutes? Yes, very, very fractionally. One thing I found quite interesting about the game is neither side really created much, despite how end-to-end it was. And that makes me think that both sides just had poor defence and also poor attack, because it wasn't really, and certainly poor execution of attack, if not poor intent, because it wasn't really like great defending, stopping chances, because the defending in both teams was quite haphazard. But if you look at the expected goals of each side, it was 0.69 to Argyle, 0.66 to Hull, which kind of backed up my view that Argyle were very marginally better, but neither side really created a whole lot.
But surely yesterday's championship football basically put an end to the fact that XG is this great big sign of how a football game goes, because Burnley had an XG of 0.84 or something, but put 5 past Cardiff. So surely this just underlines
one of them was a Matt Butcher type own goal.
Surely this just backs up my point from last year that XG is just the greatest bit of nonsense that's ever been created.
Well, no, because statistically, the vast majority of teams do revert to the mean when they are outperforming their XG or underperforming their XG. And obviously, there will be aberrations, of course, because it's one game sample size. But the people who work it out for Opta do it very scientifically, where they look at the average chance of scoring from a certain position, and they go right down to the granular detail. It isn't just a position on the pitch. It's based on stronger foot versus weaker foot. It's down to where the ball's coming from, how quickly it's coming, whether it's in the air or on the ground. There's all these little variables that come into it. So it's worked out very scientifically. But even putting XG to the side, the XG only served to back up what I already felt, which is that both teams had a fair few half chances, but neither team had really any great chances. I think we did have more chances. I think Hull probably had the best chance of the game just at the end of the first half, where there was that incident with a free kick on the halfway line, and we'll come to the rights and wrongs of that when we look at Ref Watch. But the free kick, because it is a bit more contentious than we maybe first thought it was, isn't it, Joe? So that free kick was taken from the halfway line, and it then sort of came to their player who sort of got it on the turn and almost tried to take it around Hazard, and I think it just whistled wide, or possibly it got blocked. I can't quite remember now, but that was probably the best chance of the game. We certainly had more numerically. We had quite a few like little pot shots and quite a few ones like the one with Mumba at 1-0 up where he got into a great position to shoot but didn't shoot. So yes, I do think it was a lot better than what we saw at Hillsborough. It was a lot better than what we saw in almost all of the games in the second half of the season after Schumacher left. I'll go with that as well. But my worry is this, right? And I will let somebody else speak in a minute because I know I'm rambling on a little. My worry is if that was like a tailor-made, scientific, lab-grown game for Wayne Rooney's Argyle to get a win, it was a home game, and we were better at home, always seem to be better at home, apart from weirdly for a couple of months under Foster. It was a home game against a team who commit forward a lot, leave a lot of space in behind, and are undergoing transition after losing 3 or 4 of their best players over the summer. So if there was any game that Wayne Rooney's style was sort of tailor-made to win, I think it was that one. And obviously, not only did we not win, I would say that we only slightly outcreated them. And I would say outplayed them more so than we outcreated them, but still didn't massively outplay them. They still had some very good patterns of play. They ended both halves strongly. So I guess what I'm saying is that, yes, whilst it was a lot better, certainly more entertaining, did it give me faith that I'm going to turn up to Home Park and be entertained and enjoy my afternoons this season? Yes, absolutely. Did it give me faith that we're more likely to stay in this league than I thought we were this time a week ago? Not really. And that's my summary of the game.
Yeah, I think that's way over pessimistic. I do understand where you're coming from. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying based on yesterday we will stay up, but I think it was better than you are characterizing it as being. I think there was a bigger golfing quality on the day between the two sides than you're characterizing, and on another day we could have won the game as a result of that. The issue was execution in the final third. We're still not as ruthless as we were under Schumacher at the beginning of last season. Now, it's probably unrealistic to expect us to be quite that good at executing in the final third, because we were literally, I think, certainly at home, one of the best sides, if not the best side in the league at doing that. And that is probably not sustainable, for a team that is otherwise not in that kind of bracket quality-wise. Obviously, we've also lost Finn Azaz, who was an incredibly important part of that ability to be so ruthless. I think if we had Azaz playing in the 10 yesterday, we would have scored 4 or 5 goals, basically, because he actually is so good at. Well, I think if he had been the one who had picked up those loose passes Hull were playing out of defence, we would at least have created a lot more XG heavy chances. So I do think that is a serious concern, but it's also one home game, right? On another day, Whittaker's shot goes in the top corner, or JV's shot goes in the top corner, or Hardy's one-on-one flashes inside the post. I'm struggling to sort of agree with you that Hull had anywhere near as many actually good opportunities as we did, and their goal is more of an XG buster than the one that we've scored, in my opinion. I'm not sure if the data would back that up, but I would imagine that it would.
No, it does. I think Sissoko's was about 0.25, and I think their goal was about 0.1 something. So yeah, it does.
Yeah. Sissoko's was a very good finish, but theirs was, a kind of, if you hit that, 100 times, it's very rarely going to nestle quite as neatly as it did in the corner, off the inside of the woodwork. So I think also, you're right to say that Hull are a team in transition, but so are we. And I think it's not guaranteed that we are going to get better. And I do think there's a world in which that's about as good as we can be yesterday. And the fact we didn't win the game based on that is disappointing. But I think there's also a world in which, it turns out that we get a couple more additions in between now and the end of the window that just kind of smooth things over a bit going forward. A world in which, we start to see that attacking system, which is obviously pretty new under Rooney and still in flux a little bit in terms of who plays where and the shape of it, clicking. There were certainly moments yesterday where Sissoko looked on a totally different wavelength to some of the players around him, passing balls back to Hull players. And again, not criticising Sissoko per se, but you think that when the players in those attacking areas have a bit more experience playing together, when we know who are going to be the first choice players in that area and who's going to be the impact subs or whatever, that we might just click a bit more and move on. So, like I said, I do think it's legitimate to question whether we can improve on that significantly. But I think there's enough reason to think that we can to be quite encouraged. And I do disagree with Sam's assessment of the kind of balance of the game. I think we were by far the better side. Honestly, they could have won it.
To come back on your rebuttal, I absolutely agree that if we had Finn Azaz playing, we would have won that game. And I absolutely think, furthermore, that if we'd had Whittaker at his absolute best form of the first half of last season, we would have won that game. And if we had both of them, we probably would have won it quite comfortably. But I think that is part of what I'm saying. It's not that the intent wasn't good; it's just that we didn't have it. And yes, there were some really encouraging patterns of play. And what impressed me most of all was the pressing. I thought some of our pressing was absolutely fantastic. How we won the ball, we pressed intelligently, we closed in, we didn't let their keeper have a minute's peace really all game when he had the ball at his feet, which I think is really what Rooney wants to see. But the execution when we got it just largely wasn't there. We can disagree. I think it was a little bit better than Hull's. You think it was significantly better than Hull's, and maybe some people think it was somewhere in the middle of those two measures. But at the end of the day, we still didn't have a lot of chances that we should have put away. We had our goal, which was a good finish. We had the Hardy one, very much an angled one-on-one. It was a tough chance, and we had the one where Mumba was in a lot of space and just didn't get his shot away.
He missed his kick.
Yeah. He missed kicked it, didn't he? I forgot that happened. I think I erased that from my mind. Thanks, Finn. But yeah, so look, it's still against a weak defensive team, not a lot of chances to create. And then yes, the patterns were nice, but I always felt we were one pass away from a good chance at goal. And I think largely we were.
And XG doesn't measure that, and that's a flaw in XG. One of the many flaws with it as a metric, right? It doesn't measure, which team gets into the better positions consistently. And I thought we did get into the better positions consistently. And obviously being one pass away and not getting the shot off isn't going to get you anything. But also XG is not a measure of how many goals you score; it's a measure of how many goals you should score.
No.
So it was a statistic.
Yeah. But then I guess what the
and sort of territory. Then I think we would have massively come out on top yesterday. I think we got into significantly more good areas than Hull did. Patterns of play, just again, they were let down by the final pass, but I'm hoping with a bit more practice between the attacking players, we can sort that out and become more ruthless. That's what I hope.
My final word on this would be that whilst I get what you're saying, it is absolutely less of a problem to be having the final pass go right and the finish go wrong than to not have the final pass go right, because that's then two problems to solve. If the final pass is going right and the finish is going wrong, that's just one problem to solve. So I absolutely see what you're saying, but I still think it's probably more of a concern than you're making out. And I think for us to start winning games like that on a regular basis, we're going to need either one of two things, which is either one, reinforcements, better quality players, like a top quality number 10, and maybe even another striker as well. Who knows? Or alternatively, we're going to need to get a lot better at implementing it with the players we already have. One of those two is going to have to be the case, and I don't know which one it will be. I'm hopeful it will be a mixture of both, but it could be neither, and that's what worries me.
I'd just like to quickly step in and just kind of make 2 points.
Oh, hello, Finn. Didn't see you there. Sorry, mate.
I just want to quickly step in and make 2 points that are sort of connected to that, but not at the same time. So I think there's this whole sort of circus around Wayne Rooney because he is Wayne Rooney and because he has had such a poor managerial record before this, and then obviously it was sort of exasperated by last Sunday. But regardless of who Wayne Rooney is and how bad or good his performances have been as a manager previously, he is still a new manager picking up a new squad, trying to implement his ideas. So I think there has to be some time, regardless of the fact that he is Wayne Rooney, to hopefully see the best of us. And I think yesterday was a step in the right direction, and that can't be denied, which is a positive. A negative, I would say, to that is I did think the game management and the substitutions were slightly questionable yesterday. Now, I don't know whether he took Sissoko off because he got, in my opinion, I understand why he was so elated to score that goal, but in my opinion, at that point in the game, a stupid yellow card. I don't know whether that's why he got taken off, but I wouldn't have taken him off. I think, yes, maybe the goal for Hull was of unfortunate timing because those players came on literally as they scored. However, I still think we had potential if Sissoko stayed on a bit longer to maybe create another chance, and then particularly. I mean, JB coming on for Forshaw wasn't necessarily a bad substitution. But yeah, I do think those two substitutions took a little bit of the impetus out of the game.
I think
that concerned me more than anything yesterday because the game management is very much a thing you have to get right at this level if you want to be successful.
this is not.
JB came on for someone else, didn't he? I thought JB came on for Bundu, didn't he?
We might.
Sissoko. Yes, it was it was two subs. It was Sissoko and I think Bundu came off, and JB and Isaka came on. And JB was obviously in the ACM role for a bit. We actually thought he did really well. And then when Forshaw came off, JB was pushed back into the two next to Randall. I must admit, I do think the subs were.
What point sort of still stands about the general subs here?
But I think I think the subs were made for a game at 1-0 because they were literally lined up waiting to come on when Hull scored. Now, could and should Rooney have turned around and said, actually, we're not going to make these subs. Let's give it 5 minutes and see what the flow of the game is. Does it seem stupid when you've just conceded to take off your most threatening winger? I think, yes, it is plausibly the answer to both of those questions. But I think they were subs that were designed to have us playing not quite as adventurously, not quite as gung-ho, still, with some attacking intent. Obviously, Isaka is an exciting player, and we know JB can play in a more advanced or a more withdrawn role. But I think that was kind of net a slightly defensive double substitution that was about holding a 1-0 lead. And then obviously the context for the substitution completely changed because of what happened just before it. Again, you could cancel the sub, which I think might have been the smart thing to do, but I don't necessarily think that the sub itself showed a lack of game management judgment. Would be my counter argument to that.
The sub that actually really, I don't think those subs were great, because I think taking Sissoko off absolutely killed us. And I think Isaka, as much as he, very much could be a great player one day, I think just isn't quite ready for this level yet, as we saw yesterday. I think he gave the ball away too many times, to be honest. I think he needs a loan. But Sissoko was our main threat. I get why Rooney's taken him off. I get why he was hacked off getting that daft yellow card the way he did, because it was a silly thing to do. But I still would have given him another 5-10 minutes at least, certainly after conceding. I don't think Sissoko did well. I don't think Isaka did well coming on. I think obviously JB came on with him. Weirdly, and this is another gripe I have with the subs, I think JB did do really well in ACM, certainly better than Bundu, who I think had another poor game, unfortunately, really ineffectual. But when JB was doing so well in the hole, we then took Forshaw off, which I get because his legs were going. But the sub there should, for me, have been Houghton for Forshaw and keep JB where he was, because JB was doing really well. And then what we actually did, we pushed JB back into the two, where he isn't as good. And we brought on Callum Wright, who was, well, unfortunately, completely ineffectual. So we kind of had, annoyingly, we had the first sort of 60 odd minutes of Bundu being ineffectual in the hole, but Sissoko being very good out left. We then had a sort of 10-15 minutes of JB being good in the hole, but Isaka being ineffectual out left. And that was when we had our best spell of the game, really, because even though Isaka gave the ball away a lot, he was at least still getting involved and running forward with the ball. And then that was our best spell of the game. And we sort of killed it for ourselves by making the Callum Wright sub, because that took JB away from where he was playing so well, and it put him back in the hole. And Callum Wright, much like Isaka, much like Bundu, did not have his best day at all. Oh, and we also brought on Wayne, who was, also not very good at all, I'm afraid.
And there we have it. 30 minutes in, and I have nothing else left to use from my prepared notes before tonight because it's all been covered. But we are sticking around. Do not go anywhere yet. There are well over 700 of you giving up your Sunday evening to watch us live. We are very grateful. If you are not yet subscribed or liking our pages, please go ahead and do it. And just a little reminder, as we are now halfway through tonight's show, the FCA awards are coming up and nominations are open. So do check out the Argyle Live bios for details on how you can put People's Podcaster of the Year, Sam Down, and the rest of us forward to pick up a podcasting gong. Let's quickly touch on the goals then, because I suppose we probably should mention them. Finn, why don't you very briefly just run us through the Argyle goal? Ibrahim Sissoko, as John says, he's going to have us on the edge of the seats more often than not this year, and at least this time we got an end product out of him.
Yeah, well, it was just as a result of, I mean, you could say sometimes Whittaker takes one too many shots in certain situations. However, he's not quite hit the same heights as before January as of yet. But I think yesterday from him was a lot more encouraging than what we have seen in recent months and weeks. He looked like he's sort of warming up, and I think as a result of him taking lots of those shots, even if one of them gets blocked, it's usually hit with so much power and quite a lot of accuracy that it's going to rebound to somebody else. And it did in Ryan Hardy, and then it's nice to see him actually, I think, possibly have improved on that part of his game a little bit in terms of the sort of close control element of it and the tight spaces. And it was a calm pass back to Sissoko, who, well, brilliant finish right in the corner, no chance for the goalkeeper. And I think it was a sort of probably, you wouldn't say it was against the runner play at all at that point. So it was a deserved goal. I do think, as we probably touched on, that a draw was fair, but at that point we absolutely did deserve the goal. So yeah, just a really good finish from Sissoko. And well, everyone was awful last week, but he was by far the best player on the pitch, and I think the best player on the pitch again yesterday. So yeah, just very encouraging signs.
And then
I would echo all of that. Just to quickly, I want to say, sorry, just very quickly, I want to say a real shout out to Ryan Hardy for his part in that goal. We always know he's always been a really good player for us through our rides throughout the leagues. I think one thing he has sometimes been accused of is maybe shooting too much when he could pass, but he really saw Sissoko in space, and not only was it a well spotted pass, but a brilliantly executed one, and topped off a really good game actually, I thought, from Ryan Hardy. He pressed magnificently and he used the ball well when he had it. So just a little shout out for him.
I literally had one more prepared question that we haven't answered yet, and Sam Down is already basically
was it Ryan
put a
Hardy?
size 10.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna don't ruin my fun just yet. John, come to you next because Panda to Coyle to Slater, Slater back to Coyle, halfway inside his own half, Coyle to the edge of our box to Miller back to Coyle, who is still positioned on the edge of our box. Coyle to the inside of the far post and into the back of the net. Just how did Louis Coyle manage to go 50 yards in a diagonal across the pitch without any remote pressure from a Plymouth Argyle player? And then, to top that off, receive the ball back to him and then not be closed down quickly enough.
I was literally about to say before Aaron, who is allegedly on holiday, shared his own comment, which is something he's been doing all night long. I don't think Ant and Deck have anything to worry about here. But obviously I've been beaten to the punchline there. It was a disappointing goal to concede. Obviously, I mentioned earlier that the finish was terrific. And from that point of view, obviously it's a bit of a gut punch to concede it. But yeah, the tracking is not good enough. Obviously, when their right back is able to pop up on the edge of the box and have a fairly unobstructed shot at goal, having charged up the pitch, not being tracked, that raises some questions. It just had to be Liam Miller involved as well, didn't it? I had palpitations whenever he got the ball yesterday after what he did to us twice last year.
Good player, isn't he?
He was at Preston. And actually, I didn't think he had a particularly good game yesterday, but he's one of those players who seems to always look dangerous, even if his end product isn't quite, wasn't quite as good yesterday as it was when he played for us played for Preston against us. But yeah, obviously he has terrorised the fullback and put the ball on a play. There was not quite enough pressure on it at any point, not quite enough tracking back on it at any point. But I don't want to go too overboard because it was still a finish that was still a very, very good finish, still one that probably goes wide or over the bar or into Hazard's hands more times than it goes in off the post. So it's not an absolutely criminal goal to concede, but there were aspects of it that were certainly disappointing, and hopefully they'll be looking at that this week and trying not to concede a goal like it next week or ever again.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Now for the next bit, you're gonna have to bear with me because I forgot to prepare this, but you're gonna have to stay with me because we're gonna have a little touch on Ref Watch. Lee Doughty of the Northwest of England was the man in his very luminous kit yesterday, and there was that one controversial moment, as Sam alluded to, towards the end of the first half, where Ryan Hardy was flagged for offside. Seemingly bang on the halfway line, only then for the Hull City players to proceed to take the free kick inside our half, leading to much consternation within the 16,000 people of Green Persuasion inside Home Park yesterday. It also led to Joe Edwards picking up a yellow card with his remonstrations to the referee after, as Sam alluded to earlier, that effort going wide from the resulting free kick that came of that moment. Now, I think a lot of people, including yours truly, were a little bit aghast to the decision. Actually, you three, raise your hands if you knew that this was actually a rule or not. What I'm about to tell you, because as far as I knew, my understanding of football was that you can't be offside within your own half. That was my very basic understanding of the rule. And then, brilliant on audio platform. Very good, Aaron. Nobody raised their hands to our very learned audio listeners. But the referee allowed the free kick to be taken within our own half. Hull City nearly scored. Joe Edwards gets booked. Now, I put out a tweet saying I'm not sure the referee's aware that you can't be offside within your own half. Now, I have had it clarified. First of all, at Greens1223 replied to me on X with the FA law that I have actually had verified by a couple of people, because this completely blew my mind. This is an adaptation that came in a few years ago now that says if an offside offence occurs, the referee awards an indirect free kick where the offence occurred, including if it's in the player's own half of the field in play. Now, as far as the elaboration on that rule is, and I'm going to find that reply, it's from Josh Crowsdale on Twitter, who said that's worded very poorly. What that actually means is the indirect free kick is taken from where the player touches the ball or interferes with play. So if he comes back from an offside position and touches the ball in his own half, that's where the free kick should be taken. Hey, you learn something new every day, lads, don't you?
But it still looked like it was in. I mean, maybe I'm just misremembering, and I haven't watched it back admittedly, but it still looked like whatever happened in the whole half. Like, this is all very well and good, but it just looked like the free kick was factually just taken from the wrong position. However,
so is your point of contention then that the free kick wasn't taken from where it should have been, not the actual offence that had occurred? It's the actual positioning of the free kick.
I just don't think the infraction, however you define it, happened in our half. Anyway, look, it was a baffling decision, I thought, at the time. It doesn't really matter though, does it? Because ultimately, we shouldn't have switched off. The ball could have been played over the top pretty much in the same way from 10 or 20 yards further back, whatever. I don't think it's hugely significant. If we're doing ref watch, I'll say I thought the referee was very inconsistent yesterday.
And can I just jump on something?
Go ahead.
Sorry, there was a point in the game where we were on the attack, and from my reckoning, I was sort of in front of it. Was it Joe Edwards maybe passes the ball, And like the referee can easily jump over it or let it go through his legs, but he decides to get in the way. It's like, you're not a football player. Don't get in the way of the ball. It's not that hard. Like, and you stopped an attack and you just gave a wry smile afterwards. And I just thought that was really poor. Like, you don't, you know.
In general, he seemed to not want to give Sissoko anything. And like, look, was every single one of those a foul on Sissoko? I think some of them were probably debatable. A couple of them maybe weren't fouls. But a couple of them like happened in front of me and definitely were fouls, even if Sissoko maybe milked the reaction a little bit. It seemed like his attitude was, maybe I've been told that Sissoko likes to go down easily or something, so I'm going to not be happy. Because he seemed to quite like theatrically have a word with him or sort of go no. This will be all well and good, except every time Hull players went down in a similar situation and they appealed, they seemed to get the decision. It seemed like there was a bit of a double standard at work to me. Maybe that's green tinted spectacles, but yeah, I felt he was inconsistent and didn't really help the game flow as well as it otherwise could have done, because it was as we've discussed a free flowing, entertaining match.
I think the one point that that I would have made on it, and touches very much on your point of inconsistency, John, was there was a moment in the first half where Louis Coyle and Barley Mumba are tussling for the ball deep inside the Lyndhurst side of the action. And it really is the perfect definition of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. They both end up on the ground in a heap, tangling with one another with a handful of each other's shirt. And instead of the referee just awarding a throw into whoever it was and saying to the pair of them, cut it out, carry on, play like men, he decides to award a free kick to Hull, which seemed to really get the crowd going. But yeah, overall, thankfully the referee didn't have an impact too much in the game. Darren Drew asked, was it a penalty at the end? I'm not too sure what it is, John.
Not for me. Hull player went down in the box. I think Galloway might have been involved, but it was a nothing incident as far as I can.
I don't remember there being a huge amount of protest from the Hull players. In all fairness,
there wasn't a huge amount. The referee did do a very performative, and for our audio listeners, I am now smashing my hands out from my chest area to indicate no penalty. So it was there was enough of an appeal for the ref to do that. But it was I didn't think there was a great deal in the incident, and I'm sure if it had been against us or the other way around, I would have been up in my seat screaming. But no, I think without having watched it back, it didn't seem like a particularly significant incident.
Just very quickly, did I imagine this, or was there a point in the first half where Sissoko was going down the wing, looked like he was tripped, but the referee gave a dive and awarded Hull a free kick, but then
he gave handball.
Sorry?
He gave handball is what he gave.
He gave handball because he grabbed hold of it as he went to the ground.
So is that not a yellow card?
Well, it probably should have been, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, actually, what it should have been actually was a free kick to Argyle, because it was a foul, but he didn't.
But if you're not going to give the foul, then give a yellow card.
Yeah, I know.
Consistency.
I don't mind a referee showing a bit of common sense in that instance and saying, I'll book you the next time you do this, but this is, not necessarily something that you need to have a yellow card hovering over you for. Although I guess maybe Hull fans might say that he should have been sent off if he'd been on a yellow and still been stupid enough to whip his shirt off, and that would have been quite something. But
Sam, very
quickly. There's no way he would have done that if he was on the yellow. Quickly wrap up the ref watch segment. I've not watched back the penalty.
Just like there's no way that Thomas Kaminski on a yellow card would run out of his area, have a go at wiping out a Portsmouth player, and then after failing to do so, have a really good go at wiping out a different Portsmouth player to sent off in the 30th minute of a game.
Well, yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but I think that's a bit different. And that was at least an open play, and at least you can justify the rush of blood to the head a little bit. The penalty incident, I've not watched it back. I was at the Devonport end, so didn't have the best view, but my initial feeling was he absolutely went down like a sack of spuds, and that it could have actually maybe even been a free kick and a booking for diving for their player. The Sissoko one, I think often you hear people say, oh, well, if it's not a free kick, it's a free kick and a yellow the other way for diving, which isn't correct, because there are just genuinely some instances where, it's a coming together, but it's not a foul. But what I've never have seen is it be a free kick for diving, but not a yellow. That is a bit of a rarity. So, yeah, look, bit of an inconsistent ref. Some bits weren't maybe the exact decision I would have seen made, but you know what? I think he got all the big calls right, and the one that we all castigated him over, he's made us look stupid. So I actually think a couple of little things maybe could be done better, but overall, one of the better refs I think we've had in a while down at Home Park.
Yeah, I think we probably all have to just swallow the pill on this one and just accept that, even us fans who seem to think that we know all of the FA rules, we occasionally do get it wrong. And Mr. Doughty, if you do look at my Twitter feed, I do apologise. You did know what you were doing in the first half. Let's wrap up the Hull game then, because we do have Aaron's done a very good job of starring me some questions. We've got to rattle through some full-time thoughts from social media as well, and then we'll give you a little bit of a preview towards next Saturday lunchtime's game on Sky Sports. But if you have been watching Sky Sports coverage today of the EFL, you wouldn't have a clue that Plymouth Argyle are on at lunchtime next week. They seem to have marketed every other game bar QPR versus Argyle. So let's
Joe, just quickly, what happened earlier on Sky in the championship?
they decided to I don't know. I saw there was a hammering of a team 4-0. I thought it might have been a replay from last week, but it looked like the same team.
I heard that the team that won the league last week, quite understandably, was hungover after a week of celebrations. That's what I had heard. But I didn't watch it, so I don't know.
And we look forward to the Green and White podcast reappearing on the hashtag SWFC by the end of this live stream. You are very welcome, people of Sheffield and Hull, if you are joining us. Let's rattle through this next one then, lads. Just one player each, really. Just want you to pick out your man of the match. You're not allowed to go for the same person as the person before you. So just to give it a little bit of originality, just to give some other people a mention, let's start with you, Sam. Who was your man of the match? Or who's the person you want to pick out from yesterday's game, just for a little bit of praise? Sort of keep it at 2 minutes maximum if you can.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to go for Adam Randall because I think John is clearly signalling leave him for me with that comment, aren't you? So you weren't?
No, I was just saying it should be the answer.
Okay, you know what? I'll go for Randall then. I think Sissoko was honestly my man of the match, but Randall ran him very close. He had a really good game in the middle of that midfield. He is what Rooney wants, I think, from the possession strategy in midfield, is that he is a high-risk passer of the ball. Rooney talks about fearless football. Adam Randall is absolutely fearless. Some of his passes didn't actually find the intended target, but that's because they were high-risk, high-reward passes. They were passes through about 2 or 3 players. And those are always more likely to go wrong than a simple pass. That's not that he wasn't capable of making a simple pass when he had to. When there was somebody in more space, he did that well. But he tried some really good medium and longer range passes, of which a fair few came off. And even when it was short range passes, he recycled the ball quickly. He didn't stay on the ball too long and kill our momentum like maybe some other of our CMs have done so far this season. He had a really good game in possession. He had an even better game out of possession. The pressing was good. The pressing was, I think he sort of not only did he press himself, but he was very communicative to other players. He was a leader on the pitch. I gave him a high 7 out of 10 in my match ratings. The only reason he didn't quite make an 8 is kind of partly what I said, in just some of the passes went a little bit awry. And maybe there were a couple of times where having pressed, he maybe once or twice overpressed a little and got caught a bit, but a very respectable 7 out of 10. Really good performance from him, both with and without the ball. And after a season last season for Adam Randall that was certainly not poor, but I think he would maybe be the first to admit was not as consistent as he liked. If he can keep that level of performance up, and he was not tainted by the embarrassment of Sheffield Wednesday, then I think he could cement himself as one of the first names on the team sheet. I really do.
2 minutes was the target. 2 minutes, 3 seconds. Sam Down comes in at. Finn Allen, can you beat that with your player of the game?
Right, maybe. I'm not going to go to Sissoko because that's too obvious, and I'll let somebody else maybe take that. But I think
I'm not going to take Sissoko. So you fair
okay.
enough.
Well, do you know what? I'll leave Sissoko just because we've talked about.
We have spoke about him a fair bit already, haven't we? Yeah.
So he's going to become a bit like the Morgan Whittaker of last season. It's kind of like, let's not mention him because we're just going to praise him forever then. But yeah, I think Barley Mumba is someone I'm going to pick out. I don't think he had his greatest game yesterday, but I also think it was a large step up from a lot of the performances last season. And I absolutely think from now on, having now seen the way that Wayne Rooney wants to play football when it actually does somewhat function, he's the kind of fullback we need. I mean, Victor Poulsen last week just didn't get forward. And for me, in this system, we need fullbacks who can get forward. And whilst Joe Edwards might not be the quickest, he also very, very ably gets forward as well. So yes, Barley Mumba was very good yesterday. Probably another 7 out of 10 performance, and I think from now on he needs to start. He should be again one of the first names on the team sheet under Rooney.
Yeah, I think I made the point in the group chat earlier, didn't I, that off the back of yesterday's game, I think the one conclusion I've come to, particularly, I know Wednesday night was against a mid-table League 2 team, but yesterday was up against a more hardened opposition that you can gauge the yardstick against. Providing fitness isn't an issue between now and the end of the season. I think a fullback combination of Mumba, Edwards with a smattering of Galloway maybe at left back against the more physical sides may well be the way forward. John, come to you, and then I've got a player, if you don't mention him, that I want to give a little bit of praise to, so over to you.
So mine would have been Adam Randall. I thought he was clearly man of the match, and I did give him an 8 out of 10. I think that just to quickly add to what Sam said about him, what's so impressive is he isn't necessarily the best player technically at this level, but his desire and his mentality is phenomenal. And when he decides, I'm going to pick the ball up and I'm going to drive forward with it, and he actually manages to do it effectively, he can be so effective. So yeah, I would say he was man of the match. But I guess the player I'll single out, given that Randall's already been taken, is Joe Edwards. He, I thought, was terrific yesterday. Obviously we've mentioned Liam Miller already, who is a really tricky customer at this level, someone who's given us nightmares on a couple of occasions in the last year or so. And I felt that Edwards handled him on the whole really well. Whenever there was a kind of diagonal ball, there was an aerial challenge, Edwards sort of out-jumped Miller and sort of headed out of play or won the header. He was, everything that you've come to expect from him as well. He worked hard. He was tenacious. And I think, he deserves a mention just because he is someone who we've talked about this on the podcast before, but he gets talked about as if he's nearly retired or as if, he should be moving into a managerial role. I mean, the bloke really is not that old. And, even Rooney has said publicly about him, I think, he knows he's not going to get a lot of minutes this season or start every game or something to that effect. But to my mind, he's shown, in the 2 games that he started this week, why he should be starting, or at least should be massively in contention for it. I know Poulsen is injured and obviously he's a new player for us, and I don't want to write him off, but I thought he was pretty poor on his debut at Sheffield Wednesday. And Edwards was miles better yesterday, obviously in the context of a better team performance. But, he's someone who I think just is getting written off as potentially past it way too quickly. He's still a really important player for us. He's still shown, what he can do when he gets put in the side. And yeah, I thought he was very, very good yesterday.
Yeah, fair enough. Very good. Just a little bit over. Well, you were just over, weren't you? Just 54 milliseconds or whatever it is that it comes in at. Yeah, fully agree with Joe Edwards. Before I mention an Argyle player, just for a bit of praise, there was a comment earlier about Louis Coyle. I did highlight him on the stream on Thursday night, that I thought he was probably one of Hull's better players in their squad, and I think yesterday he really did underline just where he is in the pecking order in the Championship at fullbacks. I thought he was absolutely excellent. I'm not sure there are too many duels that he lost aerially or on the ground yesterday, and we sort of got an indication earlier in the game of these lung-bursting runs that the Hull defenders come with from out the back. They were quite comfortable in carrying the ball, and Louis Coyle certainly was excellent at that. But I just want to actually talk about Morgan Whittaker. I know Finn mentioned him earlier on. I think we saw a totally different side to Morgan's game yesterday. And we saw it in his cameo on Wednesday night. There was a lot of effort from Morgan yesterday. There was a lot of tracking back. There was a lot of recovery work that he put in. I know there's a few people suggesting that perhaps he could have done better, just helping out defensively with Hull's equaliser. But I just thought Morgan's work rate yesterday was excellent. There were a couple of moments where he was able to cut in on that left side to get it onto his left foot, to get a shot away. So I don't think we're too far off Morgan Whittaker finding the back of the net, which is what we all are desperate for him to do. So yeah, just a little mention to Morgan, who I thought really did raise his game yesterday. Certainly on what we saw last week against Sheffield Wednesday, where I know he was 14th, 15th of a very, very poor side. But that was much more the Morgan Whittaker that we would like to see. Well over 1,000 of you are now joining us live. We have not got much longer to go. We're about to wrap up Hull City's game with some full-time thoughts before we give you a little preview of Saturday lunchtime's trip to the capital city to take on QPR. Let's go to Facebook first. Keith Jenkins said every point's a prisoner, as Paul Sturrock used to say, but it probably should have been 3. Confidence boosting performance after last weekend. If we play like that every week, we'll be fine. Dave Simpson says good performance overall. Very good pressing high up the pitch without the ball was pleasing to see and effective, often especially early on. Argyle had the better chances, I'd say. Hull took their goal well, but didn't have many clear-cut chances in the game. Shame not to win, but lots of positives. Goes on to mention some of the players that we have already said. Steve Eklund says, what a great entertaining game. Credit to both sides who tried to play football. Safe journey home to the Hull fans. Obviously, for Hull, it was a long way to come, given that they were only down here 100 days ago. So fair play to those Hull fans who did make the long trek to Devon yesterday. What else have we got on Facebook? Neil Harris, definitely 2 points drop, but a step up from the dross we saw at Sheffield Wednesday. I don't think you'll find many people disagreeing with that. Judy Walker says better performance today.
You should have been paying more attention to the Millwall game, though, probably.
Judy Walker says better performance today. Need to continue the improvement to get the win. And then one last comment from Facebook before we take some X comments. This is an interesting one. John Stiegel, I hope I haven't butchered that too badly. Positives, Sissoko superb. Hazard distribution looked much better. Mumba looks like he's improved defensively. Randall played very well. Isaka looked good when he came on. The negatives, it's good to see positives and negatives being outlined. Not clinical enough. Took too many pot shots from 20 yards out with no reward. Forshaw wasn't good enough for him. Hardy looked isolated and couldn't find him often enough. Bundu didn't do too much at all to show why he should be starting. And this is why football's a great game, because it throws up a whole host of different opinions. Let's head on to X, or Twitter as you and I would probably know it. At Jana995, my brief summary is that was a lot better, but it was still a home game against a poor defensive side who left a lot of space. Perfect conditions for Wazball to work, and we deservedly drew. Makes me more confident.
I've got to interject here. That was him repeating what I put in a group chat and replying to Argyle Life of it as a joke. So that's actually my thoughts you're reading there. But I'm sure he'll be delighted to hear you got on the podcast.
Well, there you go.
Sorry,
it'll be fun at times, but no more confident. This is why Aaron is usually much better at doing this job than I am.
Can I just very quickly cut in and say on the previous point, because I have been thinking this, Carl put in the comments about Forshaw how he thought he looked good yesterday. And whilst I do think he looked good, because the guy that, sorry, I forgot his name, but the guy that just commented saying that Forshaw wasn't good enough, I actually thought Forshaw was good on the ball yesterday. However, in this scenario, with the style of play that we want to try and execute, I just feel like his legs aren't up to standard, and Randall had an excellent game in covering for him a lot of times when sort of Hull broke yesterday.
There we go. There's a rebuke to the comment about Adam Forshaw. Richard Loveridge on X says much better. Rooney has definitely got a reaction from the lads. Press was really good. Commitment from the players was top draw. Probably should have had 2 or 3 scored. That will come as the front players play together more. He felt like it was 2 points dropped. David Searle, who's been in the comments this evening. Dave, good evening. Played well, had a few half chances. Both keepers not really overworked. Randall was man of the match for him. Much improved performance, but kept thinking this is the sort of game we need to win if we want to stay up. Still a work in progress. Tony Brock says better, still way too sloppy with possession in his opinion. Don't respect it enough in this league. Morgan Whittaker needs to get involved more. Again, interesting that people see things differently. Jason Harding, really good today. Would have liked to have seen Such start, but Gibson and Galloway did well. Hazard not troubled apart from their wonder strike. Central midfield looked decent. Whittaker back to putting a shift in, and Sissoko and Mumba battered their right side. I think one thing that we can say is that after last week, I think a lot of doubt was put as to whether or not we could play 2 left-sided centre halves. Yesterday, Gibson and Galloway definitely had a better link-up in their performance, although I do think the addition of Cornell Such next week against QPR may just give us just that little bit better balance. We've just ticked the hour mark. Anything else we want to add on Hull, or are we happy to move on to the R's? No? You've all
Were there not any questions from like people who've been listening live? Were we doing any of them? The pinned, the starred comments, maybe, or are they all covered?
There was a question which was something along the lines of these seemed like the lab-grown conditions for Wasball to succeed, and yet we couldn't pick up all 3 points. What does Sam think about
that? I agree. Yeah, there we go.
I'd like to quickly bring up one which says, "Why does Hazard take so long with everything he touches?" Which is actually.
Finn, if you keep quiet, Finn, we'll come to the questions. And yes, Sam, there are questions, but I was going to come to them at the end of the stream because there might be some questions that come in as we talk about QPR.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was the way I was structuring the evening. Because
I shouldn't out host the host. Sorry.
Thank you. I should just point out this isn't going to be a full preview of QPR because coming your way on Wednesday night on Argyle Life's YouTube channel and on all your podcast platforms on Thursday morning, you'll get our very first scouting report program, episode 1, where Ben is going to be doing a scout report, as it says on the tin. On the opposition, he will be joined by a fan from the opposition. So we do have a QPR fan who's going to join us on Wednesday night for episode 1 of the Scout Report. So do tune in for that. But just very quickly, between the three of you before...
Sorry, just to say, it was a really rigorous selection process for the to get the QPR fan on that podcast. It was a very detailed application they had to fill in. Had to jump through a lot of hoops.
Hey, very good. He's here all week, sadly. So that's where we're at. So just very quickly, between the three of you then, what do you expect from QPR? What are your hopes for the game? As I say, there is going to be a full preview coming later, and we are still going to get around to your questions, so do send them in. But John, QPR, your neck of the woods, relatively Loftus Road, what sort of game are you expecting against Martí Cifuentes' side?
I mean, it's still very early in the season, isn't it? So it's sort of hard to know what you're coming up against any given week. The whole game, I think, went a little bit according to what we expected, right? We discussed at the beginning how they looked like a team in transition who would try to play out from the back, but maybe not do it so convincingly. Those things came to pass. But, we could have all been spectacularly wrong and it could have gone a very different way. So I think QPR, on the one hand, perhaps should be a little bit more predictable than Hull even, because they still have the manager in charge from last season. We played them in the run-in, so not too long ago. I don't think they've had an unbelievable amount of squad turnover since then. Cifuentes' teams or his QPR team anyway seem to be well known for being incredibly well organised and disciplined defensively, but perhaps a little bit blunt going forward.
just very quickly, John, whilst they picked up last season, did you ever think they were impressive under their new manager, or do you think they sort of overperformed like a team who were down there with us last season?
No, I actually thought they looked very impressive quite often under Cifuentes, including against us in a game they probably should have won at home park in April. I think they were clearly better than us, and we were lucky to get a point that night. So from that side of things, you'd think it's going to be a very, very difficult game. That being said, they've had a bit of a kind of enigmatic start to the season, right? Which is what makes this a little bit difficult to predict. I mean, they lost at home to West Brom, who might be very, very good and certainly have a very good manager, but I'm not convinced that they're like a world-beating championship side this season. Then they went to Sheffield United and they were 2-0 down very quickly, and then managed to fight back despite having 10 men to draw the game 2-2, which is a really impressive result on paper. So I've got a feeling that we can go there and get something. I mean, a point would be a fantastic result. I don't think anyone should have any illusions about a win. About this being kind of a win or bust game. But I don't necessarily fear being totally outclassed. Now, of course, again, that could happen. I'm sure that won't make it when I'm clipped up by a QPR fan for saying this. If they do batter us, it will be a difficult game. But I think if we can put in the sort of performance more akin to the one we put in yesterday than the one we put in last week, then we've got a chance. I don't think they're a world-beating side. I think they're probably a sort of a mid-table side. So, yeah. But again, as I've said repeatedly, the huge caveat here is that it's so early that all of this could be completely wrong. We just don't know exactly what we're going to come up against on a weekly basis. But that's my best guess for them.
Ben, hopes for Loftus Road Saturday lunchtime?
Well, similar to John, really. I'm not going there expecting to win as such. I think going off last season, if QPR anything similar to that, under Cifuentes last season, if QPR play anything similar to that, it'll be a very tough match. However, I am a believer that basically until October, it's all about the performance. I'm not, obviously you want the points, but the performance is more important, because it's not until about October that you start seeing actually how the league might start shaping up when it gets to later in the season. So I think it will be worrying if we say relate back. That's why the Sheffield Wednesday, it wasn't just a 4-0 result, is that the performance across the pitch was so bad. So if it relates to anything next to that or come Saturday lunchtime, then that's worrying. However, if we play like we did yesterday, that's reason for encouragement. So I think that really.
I put it to you that there might only be 2 changes to the starting lineup on Saturday, potentially a new goalkeeper and Cornell Such at the back.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to see Bundu start again in the hole. I think he's shown he can be an effective player out left. I think in that number 10 role, he's really not been at it in either of the 2 games. I know Callum Wright's not been at it either when he's come on, really. And I know that Isaka has been a bit hit and miss and probably is too young to be starting every week. So I guess the question would be, who do you put in there? And maybe we'll sign another number 10 by Saturday. If not, I would put JB there. I think for that 10, 15-minute spell he was there, he was good. And I'd probably go with Randall and one other in CM, which might be Randall and Houghton, might be Randall and Forshaw, might even be Randall and a new CM if one does occur. But the alternative thing is you could actually, to combine those changes, put Such in CM with Randall and just keep the Gibson and Galloway pairing, because Such can play CM as well. Have Such and Randall CM and JB pushed up. That could happen. But yeah, I think if a new goalkeeper's coming in, he's coming in to start. We'll maybe touch on Hazard a bit in response to the listener questions. But I think if a goalkeeper is coming in, he's coming in to start. As to the game itself, I'm maybe a fraction more confident than I previously was, because I'm looking at the sort of team news. I think Elias Chair, who's probably QPR's best player, is out with a back injury. I think probably from carrying their team too badly. And I think that they're, as much as they are a good side on paper, they did well under Cifuentes in the second half of last season. they haven't started the best. Yes, they're 2 tough games, West Brom and Sheffield United. I think West Brom, they're still in a bit of financial trouble, whatever, but their actual squad, man for man, certainly at the moment, is still very good. And Sheffield United were the best teams in the league on paper. So, yeah, that game alone to fight back with 10 men was a good result. But then 1 point out of a possible 6 never looks great. But let's be honest, they'll be looking at that game and thinking, after a couple of games in which we've failed to beat top quality teams, but we've only got still shown some signs of encouragement. From their point of view, what better game to get their first win than home to Plymouth Argyle will be probably what they're thinking. So it's our job to go there and spoil their party. I guess as much as I do have that little bit more optimism that maybe they'll have a little bit of pressure on them, they're missing their best player. They first home game they lost. All of that being said, they were much improved under Cifuentes at Loftus Road. I think under Gareth Ainsworth, there was an absolutely ridiculous stat, but they only won 3 times at Loftus Road in like a year. Some absolutely ludicrous stat. Cifuentes massively improved their home record.
The stat, I believe, was that 3 teams had scored more goals against them in the calendar year at Loftus Road than they had scored at Loftus Road, despite playing there. At one point, quite late in the year, I think that was true. Blackburn were one of them, I think, and someone else maybe.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely astonishing stat. But going back to the point, Cifuentes has made them a much better home team. So I think we are going into it as underdogs. I guess the problem I have, despite the reasons that we might go there and put them under a bit of pressure, is we are not a team setting up to play like the underdog. I think Rooney, as much as I certainly don't think he's as good as Schumacher, and I certainly don't think the team he has is as good as Schumacher either, he's far more like Schumacher in his intent than he is Foster. I feel that if we're going to win many games under Rooney, they're going to be home games that we just go at teams and just attack them and score more than them. It's not going to be away games. We're not going to have a performance like when Sheriff Tiraspol went to Real Madrid and just put all men behind the ball and got a last-minute goal. That's not what we're about at all. Ian Foster tried to do that a few times, but that's not what we're about. So that's going to be the struggle, is having that attacking, no-fear style in a game where, much like at Sheffield Wednesday, we could just get outclassed. So maybe we can put them under a bit of pressure. They need a win. Their fans might get a bit restless. They're missing their best player, but I think they'll have too much for us, if I'm honest.
Let's quickly rattle around and get some score predictions. I think in our predictions league, I went actually a 2-1 away win for this one. John?
Can't remember exactly what I said for our predictions league, but I think it's at a draw. 1-1 maybe. I'll be optimistic and I'll go with that. I could just see it being a game where they're favoured on paper, as Sam said, but it just sort of proves that they look a bit blunt going forward, and we therefore don't. The fact that we look a bit calamitous defensively, or at least have that in us, doesn't necessarily prove to be as big a liability as it could be, and we're just able to nick a goal at some point. I'll say 1-1.
Finn?
I think I went 3-1 for this, and I'll go with that. I think we can get beaten 3-1, but still look positive in attack. I think that where we're going to get undone this season maybe is being a bit too front-footed in some scenarios, and I think if QPR play well, then they've got enough quality probably to score against us. Having said that, maybe if we bring a new keeper in, he might just come in with a bit of it could go either way. It could be like he doesn't know his back four, or it could also be like he comes in with a bit of confidence, has an absolute blinder, and we somehow win 1-0. So, but I will go for a 3-1 loss, but a more positive performance.
Sam?
Sorry, I forgot to hit myself off mute. I think they'll just have too much for us. I think we are going to have a few frustrating away games like we did under Schumacher. 2-0 defeat, I think.
Oh, wow. There we go. Please don't take this all seriously. It is just light-hearted, but it's nice to see we've assembled the positive crew for this evening's program. So we are an hour and 13 minutes in. We have 1,200 of you watching live, and we're about to tackle the next 15 minutes or so of your questions that you've sent in. So we'll try and keep the answers as brief but in detail as you can, if that's relatively possible. John, I think this one's actually got your name written all over it from David Searle. How does Sheffield Wednesday's result today make last week's result look now?
As much as there are things I would like to say to this, I don't think it's particularly relevant. Yeah, okay. One could do the thought experiment whereby, what is it, like transitive properties? Sheffield Wednesday beat us 4-0, Sunderland beat them 4-0. Therefore, Sunderland would are like 8 goals better than us, right? That would be one way of looking at it. But football doesn't work that way. Equally, we drew 1-1 with Hull. So did Bristol City. Bristol City have 4 points from 3 games. So are we as good as Bristol City? I mean, it's just so early in the season. Things are so unsettled. Teams' true lineups and tactics and level is all up in the air and being decided. I don't see a great deal of contradiction in a team winning 4-0 one week and losing 4-0 the next. I really don't. It's way too early to know what that means. I don't think their result today devalues their win over us. I don't think it means that we were any less shocking than we were. I think it's better to just judge games relatively in isolation at this stage of the season until those patterns kind of become clearer, until you have a sort of adequate sample size to draw some actual meaningful data from them. Yeah, for now, I don't think it's something that makes too much difference. It was a bad day at the office and a terrible performance in isolation, and I think that's how we should be thinking about it, rather than trying to sort of read some big extrapolation into today's game.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair summary. I think you've got to really praise Sunderland with how they're attacking the season. I put on my own Twitter feed that I watched their game last week at Cardiff. I thought they were very impressive there with the way they controlled the game, and this was just a totally different kettle of fish. They really hammered home their superiority, and whilst Gab Sutton got ridiculed for his high expectations of Sunderland, perhaps he might be a little bit far-fetched to have them first in the league, but they certainly will be up in and around it come the business end. They're probably a striker short, but this isn't a Sunderland podcast, so let's bring it back.
It's not certain though, is it? Because teams have great starts to the season all the time and finish poorly, and teams have terrible starts to the season all the time and do well. It's possible. I know this would be heresy for some to hear it that they've played 2 bad teams when things start to shake out. I know obviously one of those teams has already won the league, but it's possible that at least the first team they played was really bad. So I don't know, long way to go. I'm not.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, the litmus test, as you said earlier, is going to be this Saturday when they take on Burnley at home. If they can put in a similar level of performance against Burnley and hold them to a result, then I think you suddenly have to start taking Sunderland very seriously. But I just think they've got a lot of good players in attacking areas. As I say, watching them today, I thought they look particularly smart. So I think Sunderland will have a good season. But as I mentioned, this isn't the Roker Report or any other Sunderland podcast that are out there. This is the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Live. And Sam Down, this question's for you from JRRB. I don't know whether that's a West Country term on JRB. Do you think Whittaker could work in the 10? Worried we are nullifying his ability by having him too wide too often. What do you think about
that? Not sure about it. Thing is, because his game is he starts in wide positions, he cuts inside, builds up momentum and shoots, and by coming inside, he will then take a player with him and free up room for others. If he's already starting inside, that basically takes away the ability for him to do that. And on the games where he did start as a central player last season, I think there were a few around the time where Bundu and Hardy were both injured. He had some minutes in the central role. I think we didn't get near the best out of him. I'm not going to say it couldn't work. I mean, it might do. He is just a very talented player, but I think we'd be wasted. I don't think we're nullifying him having him too wide, because I think that's where he's had his best games for us. I think we would be nullifying him if we played him centrally, is my honest answer on that.
Finn, come to you next. Sticking on that theme of the number 10, do you think Callum Wright could solve the 10 issue if given a run of games? Of course, we should mention there was if you check the transfer centre, there is a story about Callum Wright today. about a potential outgoing from home park. But what do you think of George's question there, Finn? Can Callum Wright solve the 10 issue?
At this point, I'm not sure anymore, to be honest. I've seen too many games of Callum Wright now, where he's just completely ineffectual. Like I know he was unfairly pushed out under Ian Foster, and then came back, and I don't think was particularly great. Bar that, I think Dan Scarr was great, but I don't think Callum Wright was particularly great. Bar that amazing, well, actually don't know how amazing it was, but good cross for Joe Edwards' amazing header against Hull to keep us up. I think it's, if we can get a replacement in and get a decent fee from Lincoln, I'd probably look to shift them on, to be honest. As much as that kind of hurts for me to say, because he was so good in League One, but just has not been, well, bar maybe some good play against Stoke for Randall's winner at home last season, and there's been very few, and the Hull assist, as I previously mentioned, there's been very few moments that stick out to me of Callum Wright in the Championship for Plymouth Argyle.
Go on, Sam.
Just quickly, as someone who has been one of Callum Wright's biggest fans and biggest defenders, I'm coming around to agree with that. I still think, like, in theory, he has the technical ability that he could be at least competent in the Championship. But I just can't ignore my eyes. I can't ignore the number of games where he's just not had a meaningful impact. And unfortunately, yesterday was another one of them. So I think it might be time to just take a decent fee we can get for him. Thank him for his excellent role in that half season of the title season, because it was an excellent half season he had. And we will always, whatever happens, remember Shrewsbury away as one of our finest ever moments if he does depart. But yeah, I'm in agreement with Finn.
If you haven't already read the transfer centre, do go over and give it a look on argylelife.com, because, as I said, there is a story there about Callum Wright. Sam comes. No, John, you're next, aren't you? Alex Richards on Facebook asks, apart from Randall, our midfield is awful. Who are we signing to give our forwards service for the rest of the season? I think I'll tweak that question just a little bit. Do you think it's important before the transfer window ends a week on Friday that we do get another midfielder into the building?
I think we definitely need a number 10 to come in. Definitely. The more we're seeing of this Rooney formation, the less it looks like 4-4-2, and the more it looks like 4-2-3-1. And you need someone who has guile and vision in behind Hardy or Tijani, as it may be sometimes. Look, I really do like Bundu a lot. I think he's got a lot of phenomenal qualities as a player, and I think he is quite a guileful player. I think he's a player who's really intelligent. I just don't think it's working in that central kind of number 10 role for him. I don't think that's the type of player that he is. So I think we absolutely have to get someone in there if we're going to play that way. And just generally, I think that would be a smart option to have, because it seems like the kind of missing link between our midfield and our attacking options at the moment. I guess this kind of comes back to the question, which has been a kind of existential one for us. Maybe that's over-egging it a bit, but a big one for us ever since Finn Azad's left, right? We still haven't replaced him, and that's partially because he's a unique, unreplaceable player in just the. I mean, as regular listeners will know, I'm one of his biggest fans, so I won't wax lyrical about him again. But I think he's a unique player in terms of his particular skill set, and we won't get someone quite like him. But there are other options around. One name who I mentioned in the chat earlier is Charlie Patino from Arsenal. He was on loan at Blackpool 2 seasons ago, on loan at Swansea last season.
Patino.
That's not the chant. He knows.
I'm just creating a new one.
Well, no, that's Bundu's chant, I think you'll find. But he does know, Charlie Patino knows the place to go, though he has never seen the boys in white and green. Look, I think he's someone who would positionally at least slot into that number 10 mould, and who has not got a loan yet. I struggle to think that he's going to be getting too much game time at Arsenal this season, so I imagine there will be a loan for him at some point, and I think we're a realistic option for that. In terms of the sort of midfield two, It depends a little bit, right? I guess that there's a possibility that we could lose some bodies in there. You know, is Jordan Houghton going to stick around and be a sort of squad player? Is he going to maybe go out? I don't know. If, I think I could see either of those outcomes happening. Again, a player I really like, but I think the broader point I'm trying to say is, that if there are some outgoings, that'll dictate incomings that we need. I think just one more body in there, one more option either way would be good. I'm kind of open to a range of different types of player that could be. A very high name on my list to get back would be Alfie Devine, but I've heard has he signed for Sheffield Wednesday yet? Devine, I've heard very strong rumours linking him with Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously, you would want to
only rumour at this stage.
Okay, well, I understand why you would want to play for the champions, but if he did want to come back here instead, I think that would be an excellent fit for Rooney's system. We discussed this on the pod after the whole game at the end of the last campaign, where we kind of felt we'd sort of only seen him really play once in his best position, right? And it was on the final day. So having him back as a kind of more deep-lying midfielder in a 2, I think could be really, really exciting. Equally, I've seen this rumour going around, which I think was mentioned in the comments about Oliver Norwood. Don't know how much stock to put in that. Don't really know what his state of fitness is, but he would be someone more in the Forshaw mould of a sort of experienced head. I think just like one more body rather than a particular type of player in that midfield area would be welcome. But I think that the type of player that we really do need to sign, as I said, is a number 10. I think we really, really need to get someone in who's not a midfielder per se, but the second striker or the attacking midfielder, or however you want to define it. That for me is in terms of that general area of the pitch is by far the most important position for us to sort out.
Yeah, just to quickly add on that, I'm sorry I'm jumping in on everyone else's questions, but I do think I've got a point to make it. When earlier in the year, people sort of said about, how quickly the tables turn. Last year, we were moaning about not enough attacking players. Now we're moaning about too many. I think that was very much people were thinking the expectation of, hang on a minute, but some people were mocking for that and saying, oh, we're going to play 4-4-2. I think people kind of maybe assumed it was going to be more of a flat 4-4-2, whereas very much now we've got a bit more of a sense of how the team's taken shape. We know it's going to be a 4-2-3-1. Yes, where we have a lot of options but are badly lacking quality is that number 10 role. I think you could have maybe a Saka as the main backup for Whittaker. Bundu, I guess, is the main backup for Sissoko. Callum, obviously, Tijani is the main backup for Hardy. Wayne can maybe cover a couple of positions. Callum Wright might be moving on. We need another number 10 in there. I honestly think if we can get someone like Josh Coburn and we've got the money, it might not hurt to have another striker as well if we're being greedy. But we definitely need another number 10. I think not only have we not replaced Daz, we've not even really replaced Cundle, who left the same summer. I know you could maybe argue Devine was a replacement for Cundle, but I think Devine, and this is why I'm actually less high on him as a signing than John, Devine, as much as I am with John in the Alfie Devine fan club, and cheers to that night in Rakuda, Alfie, if you're watching. Yeah, but as much as I like John, I'm a big fan of Alfie Devine. I think he suits down to the ground like a number 8 in a 4-3-3. I'm not sure he really suits a number 10 in a 4-2-3-1. I mean, I think he suits it better than being out wide in a 3-4-3, which is what we played him as. So I think that would suit him better, but I still don't think it would be a best position.
To be clear, I was advocating signing him as a central midfield option in the 2.
Okay, fair enough. I get that a bit more, but then also, I guess, even then, I don't think it's an ideal position because I think he's, as much as he does have a lot of talent, I think I kind of said last season on the pod of Alfie Devine, he is very much a bits and pieces player. He's kind of like good at a lot of stuff without really naturally fitting a position. And I kind of think with him, and I hope I'm wrong, and if he does sign and he does well, I'd be delighted. I kind of feel with him, he needs to play in a 4-3-3. Because he's not quite attack-minded enough in advanced areas to be a number 10, but I also don't think he's good enough defensively to play in a double pivot. So I think he needs the support of being that almost luxury option in midfield. And if he has that, that's where his deep-lying playmaking skills can really come into play. And unless we're going to play a 4-3-3, not sure he's quite the right option. But I'd love to.
I think we'd all love one more opportunity to party with Devine. If we get the chance, and who knows, if he does come back, that might be possible. Finn, just very quickly, JRB again, a lot of chat about Josh Coburn potentially being available. I see that Millwall seem to be making the most noise about trying to get him in, because I think Millwall are just trying to sign as many strikers as they possibly can at the moment. Do you guys, do you still feel like that's an opportunity? Is it one that we've potentially missed now? Do you think we need another striker with Ben Waine potentially then going back out on loan or even to another club altogether?
Yeah, I mean, I've made no secret that I don't think Ben Waine is Championship standard. And that's nothing against Ben Waine. I just think he needs a loan or either to be sold. To just kickstart his career really. I suppose you could argue it was kick-started in New Zealand. But anyway, I think obviously it was very obvious that we kind of put all our eggs in one basket for Coburn last summer, and we genuinely thought that he was going to go out on loan. And then when he didn't, we kind of scrambled around, and that's how we ended up getting, in the end, Mustafa Bundu, so who's not really a striker himself. I mean, it's a hard one because we've been told there's more money, but actually we haven't. Well, we might have spent it on wages and stuff, and I'm sure people like Sissoko or even Cornel Suge wouldn't have been necessarily cheap. But I can't see us going out and spending 2 million, to be honest, at this stage in the window. If we were to spend 2 million, it might be on a keeper, but even that, I don't think it's going to be the case with some of the names you've been linked with. So yeah, I wouldn't mind at all to see somebody like Josh Coburn. I just think the realistics of it is not, it being that realistic is not on the cards.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I'm quite a big fan of Josh Coburn. I think he would make a difference, even maybe even more so now, to how we play. I think he would certainly give us that outlet we'd be looking for. But hey ho, maybe that would be somebody else's kettle of fish. I wouldn't be too surprised if over the next 7 days, if Coburn is available, that we perhaps see a certain club in Staffordshire, given who their head coach is, have a little sniff around Coburn, because we know Schumacher was a big admirer. Sam,
And
coming to you.
We all know what happens when that club in Staffordshire come calling for you.
You can't say no. You just can't say no. Same as Preston and Sheffield United. When they come calling, you just can't say no. Sam, one for you. Then we got one with John just to finish off. And it sort of ties in with this question from Darren. But I'm also going to throw in a question from David and Stevie as well. Why does Hazard take so long with his touches? And then the two questions from the other lads say, do we need to spend all of Cooper's money on a new goalkeeper? If so, how much? And as David Sale says, any news on a new keeper? Hope to have had one in by Saturday, but nothing. Did he miss something? No, David, you did not miss something. But as far as Mr. Rooney gave an inclination to last night, that we're not far away. He's got 2 in mind, is it? I think he said, Sam.
Yeah, he did, which I think in the fairly open secret to those of you who've seen what Alan Nixon's put on his Patreon, and I'm sure he'll probably block me if he sees me talking about it on the podcast, as he is very prone to do. But Alan Nixon has today reported, I don't subscribe to his Patreon, by the way, I want to make that quite clear. But Alan Nixon has reported that it's down to Daniel Grimshaw of Blackpool or Nathan Baxter of Bolton. And I think probably Grimshaw, I think he hinted, was looking the more likely of the two. Yeah, on Hazard, look, I know he has become a bit of a scapegoat when he's played, and I don't really like it when we have scapegoats, because I do think that he is a keeper who does have some admirable qualities when it comes to shot stopping. And actually, you know what? I do think his distribution was better yesterday. There weren't so many that were shanked out of play. That some of the passes to feet were actually quite well timed. So I do think his distribution was better than it normally is. Still not as good as Cooper's, and Cooper's in and of itself is still not as good as the very best keepers in this league when it comes to distribution. But it was better. I do still think he does take too long. Yes, I think he's just not natural with his feet. He's a very tall keeper, possibly slightly cumbersome in his movement at times, and he just isn't as naturally talented with his feet as Cooper or the really high end keepers of this league. So naturally, he is going to take a bit more, just because that he just doesn't have that ease of just sort of naturally finding the right pass as some other keepers would. So I do think that's a skill issue for him, really. And I do think that's probably why he's not going to be our first choice or shouldn't be our first choice. I think he is an admirable enough backup, but he can frustrate me at times. Like at the end of the game is the incident people asked about. Why did he leave it so long to take that goal kick at the end of the game? You know, you could argue, yes, Hull had a good chance. You know, we're trying to secure the point, but there was like 20 seconds left on the clock. If we give it that big boot up the field, there was not going to be time for Hull to get it back down the other end. If that had come to nothing, it would have just been cleared and then the referee would have blown it. They wouldn't have had time to attack again. So there was no object in doing what he did and slowing the game down. And I think Rooney was not happy with him. I could have read the body language wrong, but I think Rooney was gesticulating at him, almost telling him to get on with it. And then obviously when he finally did, full time blew. So he doesn't help himself at times when he does stuff like that. He is a good shot stopper. I think the stats back that up. He saves what you'd expect him to save and a little bit better. But I would not feel comfortable going into September with him as our first choice keeper, I'm afraid. So I think it will probably be Grimshaw. I think he made a bit of a cock up for one of Blackpool's goals that they conceded yesterday, but we're not going to read too much into that because look at Michael Cooper at Bristol Rovers when he was unsettled. His head wasn't in the right place. He made 2 big errors for their 2 goals. Could be a similar case with Grimshaw. He's a little bit unsettled, doesn't know if it's going to be his last game or not, and he's made an error. So give him a chance. I think their fans tend to quite like him generally. He came through Man City's academy, so he's clearly had good coaching pedigree. I think he's quite renowned for being good with his feet, from what I know of him, which isn't a great deal, but I think he is quite renowned for being a good keeper with his feet, so I can see why Rooney likes him, if that's true. And I think he could be a promising keeper if we can get him in.
Yeah, and obviously, every goalkeeper who has come through the Manchester City Academy is really a model of goalkeeping excellence. No hugely overpriced, overrated Premier League or upper Championship goalkeepers have come out of there. So who may or may not have been in the England squad in the summer, at least.
Also, Ireland's best player since Roy Keane, obviously, as well.
Yeah. So
we're going to get the Burnley fans clipping us up now, and the Bolton fans are both going to clip us up now. You said that.
But I think just coming on Sam's point, I understand what he's saying about Hazard with his feet. He is a tall man, and obviously that is probably going to impede the dexterity of the way he can play the ball out with his feet. But it's with his hands as well. It's the slowness seems to be about way more than his distribution with his feet. He doesn't bowl the ball out quickly when it's in his hands. And the comment that we had, why does he always take so long? I think is a fair one. Like again, I agree with Sam. I don't like having scapegoats. I think that Hazard is much better than his detractors say he is. Sam alluded to, he's a terrific shot stopper at times. We all remember Hull away last season when he pulled off 2 or 3 world-class saves in injury time in that game to secure us a point. He's got a lot of qualities, but he is slow with his distribution, and it's costing us opportunities to be quick in transition, which looks like a very, very key part of how we play. And that is a big, big problem. And I do want to just come back on that moment at the end of the game yesterday when, which Sam alluded to, where he took ages over the goal kick and was so leisurely about it. And he got booed by the fans in the corner where I was sat for it, which might seem a bit harsh, but I think the booing was just a sign of frustration with the fact that is what he is always like when it comes to the option of getting the ball out quickly. And what I really didn't like was, again, unless I've got the body language wrong, he turned around after kicking the ball forward and had a go at the fans in the corner, basically, like, what do you want me to do? But it seems, Sam seems to be correct that, from what I've heard, Rooney was kind of going a bit ballistic at him on the touchline. Everybody wanted us to get the ball forward in that moment. Would it have led to a goal? There were 20 seconds left. Probably not. But as Sam also says, I don't really see what the risk of it was. And I think that just being perceived as settling for a point at home to a side where who we should have beaten, and that lack of urgency in the body language. Again, maybe this is not what he intended by it, but that's how it came across. And I really do understand that frustration. And I think it just underlines why, even though he does have a lot of qualities, and even though he is a tremendous shot stopper at times, we have to get someone in who is more proactive in terms of distribution, both hands and feet, who just looks more confident when doing it.
I've always said he's I'm absolutely happy for Conor Hazard to be our backup Championship goalkeeper.
Of course, yeah.
He's more than capable of doing that, and I wouldn't feel scared if he has to come in for the occasional game now and again. And that's absolutely fine. But just like you said, the way that we want to play, I think it's absolutely pivotal we get somebody in who is more confident with that part of their game.
We've got one question left, John. So I don't know if you want to unmute yourself. It's from Cole Barnard. What's in the fridge?
It's actually my dad's fridge. So I actually genuinely don't know what's in it. And I'm not
Well, this could be a really. Oh, I was just saying, could be a really exciting way. It could have been a really exciting way to have ended tonight's episode.
Seems like it would be a violation of GDPR, the General Data Protection Refrigeration. So I'm gonna.
Very good. That's it. 1 hour and 40 minutes in. We have 1,400 of you joining us live. We are very grateful. Just a little bit of housekeeping. John will hopefully point down to the right-hand side of your screen where you can still get some Argyle Life merchandise from the shop. Other way, John. There you go. I think there might be 1 or 2 heavily reduced items on there very soon for players who are no longer part of this parish. Don't forget the Argyle Life bios for the content awards nominations. Do get them in. It would be a great, we would be very appreciative of that if you can do it. And don't forget Wednesday night on YouTube and on Thursday via your podcast platforms is episode 1 of the scouting report for the 2024-25 season. Ben will be joined, as John mentioned, through a rigorous test to try and find a QPR fan who could jump through hoops to join us to give us the scouting report on QPR. So that will be your big game preview. Sky didn't mention it in their earlier broadcast of Sunderland's fantastic 4-0 victory over Sheffield Wednesday. So I will mention it instead. 12:30 Sky Sports main event and football is QPR away. It's our second game on Sky this year, so do tune into that. And then we will be back on Sunday evening. You're stuck with me once again. Aaron's still on holiday, so you're stuck with me, and I'm not actually sure what the guest list looks like for next week, but I'm sure a couple of you guys will be joining me once again. So thank you, John. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Finn. Thank you to the 1,400 of you who have joined us live this evening. If you have missed the episode or you have got involved halfway through, you can catch it on all your regular platforms after tonight's program is over. So that's it from us, and we will see you again on Wednesday night for the scouting report, and then next Sunday for the QPR review. Night all.
Thank you.